Hey, good morning, Refuge. It's actually early evening, late afternoon on Saturday for me. The snow is falling, and we have a lot more to come. And it's supposed to be uh, a whole lot by tomorrow morning. And so, one of the redemptive aspects of technology is that we can do this, and you can stay home. And I hope you're enjoying some coffee, looking out over the freshly fallen snow, getting pictures of your lawn furniture, and having French toast like we do. Uh, couple announcements. Next weekend, Friday and Saturday, is the men's workshop. I think it's going to be really good. It's some other local pastors that are going to be coming in and talking to men. I hope they're bringing some of their guys. Invite friends. We're going to talk friendship. We're going to talk about like how to be accountable as a man, and we're going to talk addictions. And I think it's going to be really really helpful. Uh, the next Sunday after that, the 8th, is Super Bowl Sunday. So grab some hot wings and invite yourself to somebody's house and just show up. Find a place. The Super Bowl is a great communal thing. So if you're into it at all, invite yourself over to somebody's house and do that. But also that Sunday is going to be baptism. And so that's going to be really, really cool. I've had a lot of great conversations with some people that are getting baptized. If you have any interest in that, want to know more, you can email pastor@seekrefuge.net, elders at seekrefuge.net, office at seekrefuge.net. We would love to talk more, and dunk you in the water, and to signify our new life in Christ. So if you're interested in that, that is the 8th. Also, the first Sunday of our membership class is the 8th, right after church. So this week was supposed to be David, and talking about David's downfall, his sin, his great sin. I don't want to do that on a recording. I want to do that when we can be together, and really when we can ask questions and we can look in each other's eyes. So it actually schedule wise it's okay, but I thought maybe we could prepare our hearts a little bit, because David, the guy that we've been looking at as such a great role model for so long, is just going to have a massive downfall, and it's going to get worse, and it's going to last him really the rest of his life. So I thought something maybe to prepare our hearts just a little bit for that would be go back to the words of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. And so this morning, Matthew 5:43-48. And really, if you want to take time on Sunday morning or sometime this week to read through and read out loud the words of Jesus, Jesus is quoted often. And lots of us have various parts of his life that we kind of understand, and we can take his best hits. But when Jesus says things, they are really convicting, and they probably go deeper than we would get in sound bites. So I would say to read the entire thing, Matthew 5 through 7, the entire Sermon on the Mount. But this morning, 5:43-48, you've heard it said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good. He sends rain on the just and the unjust. If you only love those who love you, what reward do you have? The tax collectors do the same thing. If you greet only your brothers, then what more are you doing than anybody else? Gentiles do that. Therefore, you must be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. That's verse 48. I'm not going to unpack verse 48 today. We could talk about it another time, but there's a lot there, but it's probably both less and more daunting than we think. All right. I want to finish with, we've talked a lot hypothetically, the vision of the church. We've talked a lot about love and loving others, and what do we do? What do we believe? All that stuff. And so today I thought maybe a little more practical, maybe a little more pushing in on what does this actually look like. As the punchline, just to tell you the end before we get there, the goal of the follower of Jesus for any relationship with someone else is always reconciliation. It is always the hope that it is always pulling back on the fact and the idea that we have been reconciled to God. And it is always the want that someone else, even our enemy, even the person that we can't stand the most, would be reconciled to God. That's the end. That's the end goal. So you can turn it off right now and walk away, but I have a lot more things to say. This morning, let's just dive into it. So the first things that Jesus says, you've heard it said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. Um, Now, Jesus is referring back to Leviticus 19. There are a number of laws, and he is quoting scripture, and he's kind of partially filling that gap in with just common cultural belief. Leviticus 19 talks a lot about how to love your neighbor. And there's a lot of ways that you love your neighbor just in how you live. Okay. You don't steal from your neighbor. You don't oppress your neighbor. You don't slander or lie about your neighbor. You don't hate them in your heart. You are honest with them. You love your neighbor and care for them as you are caring for yourself. This was a direct command from the Mosaic Law, Deuteronomy, but Leviticus 19 just really nails that home. And the debate had become, and Jesus walked right into this, the debate among many rabbinic thoughts and voices of the day is that qualification. Qualifications, oh my goodness, the asterisks are everywhere, right? Well, then who is my neighbor? And different rabbis gave different answers for that. Which person am I actually obligated to do this to? And certainly it was probably never explicitly taught to hate your enemy, but it was perfectly justified, even back then and certainly now, and in some cases even morally responsible to hate certain people, certain groups of people, and absolutely to hate oppressors. That was the way of the world. It is the way of the world. And David even prays in the Psalms, should I not hate those who hate you? So before we get going here, get those people in mind, whether it's the stereotype of the person, and this is always my confession, the slow cars in front of me and the fast cars behind me, the people in line at the grocery store that just drive you crazy, that are taking their time, the people that stop to look at their list in the middle of the aisle at Sam's, the people that drive the wrong way on the angled parking lots. All right. And then you get political, get religious, get sports fan loyalties. You walk into that. Get the people in mind that are your enemies. And if you're like, well, I don't have any enemies. Yes, you do. Think harder. Hit pause and ask the person next to you right now, or send a text to somebody. Hey, do I have enemies? And they'll give you a list. I'm kind of being funny, but seriously. So I think the commands of Jesus hit a little bit heavier when we are like putting ourselves in there. So love your enemies, and get that into your mind. And then Jesus goes on, right? You've heard it said, love your neighbors and hate your enemies. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. So that, and this is kind of litmus test type stuff, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. So like, to be a child of the King, to know that you have come to actually know him, is to be able to actually love your enemy. We'll get back to that at the end. He makes his sun rise on the evil and the good. He sends rain on the just and the unjust. If you love those who love you, great. You're doing what everybody does. If you're only giving high fives in your own locker room, if you're writing the smackdown mic drop comments to the people you disagree with, you've done what everybody else has done. There's nothing special with that. This is a radical thought. This is a radical thought, and it's actually despised in our day. I think like across the board, we like parts of it, but it's also it's really hard to get the whole thing. Sometimes I think we're convinced, and this is the old school Christian, right? That we are loving our enemies by telling them how sinful they are. I don't know if you've ever heard that. I've heard that a lot. Well, how would they know how lowly and sinful they are if we don't tell them? And I'm like, well, yeah, but you're kind of laying it on thick. Is that love? And we can say, we can talk about love a lot, and it just kind of flows off the tongue. It's part of our cultural liturgy. Be a good human, all of that. but to actually love our enemy. And Jesus actually gets even more invasive. He says, pray for those who persecute you. So basically what Jesus is saying, he is saying to Jewish people in that day to actually pray for your Roman oppressors. And it's likely, given the tone here, it's probably not Jesus saying pray for their destruction. He's saying pray for their good. Like, it's one thing to go, I pray for my enemies that fire from heaven would rain down on them and their car would be cast off the Blanchette Bridge and what, like, but Jesus is actually telling us to pray in a way that is loving. I heard a pastor one time say this. He said to picture your enemy and in your mind, go up next to them, put your arm around them and plead to God on their behalf. Pray for their reconciliation. Pray for their heart. This is hard. And here's the thing. This is what makes it harder. Their response doesn't justify, their response is not the goal. The call is, if you're a follower of Jesus, this is your calling. Well, they do this. And what if and how come nobody actually becomes a Christian? And actually people will hate you if you express forgiveness to the side that I disagree with. And that's both great and frustrating. People may not agree with you. People may not, in fact, sometimes your own side doesn't agree with you if you express forgiveness. But this is the God that gives rain on the just and the unjust. Rain was necessary. Agrarian society in our day, rain is necessary. And it's necessary for Cardinal fans and it's necessary for Cub fans. And the snow will fall in the north and in the south. The rain will fall on the crops of God's children and the crops of their oppressors. But also with that, God is the perfect judge. God is the one that will not stand for injustice. And if it were up to our righteousness for rain to fall, for crops to grow, for the sun to shine, for all that to happen, then it would never fall. We're called to treat human beings as image bearers of God, regardless. I'm going to hit the trifecta today, and I'm going to go downhill here real fast. David Foster Wallace, Tim Keller, and Brothers Karamazov. So buckle up. David Foster Wallace, in his great speech, This is Water. One of the things he talks about is how easy it is to go on default mode. We are trained by everything around us that we are the center of the world. We take in everything from our perspective. We read the news from our perspective. We think that that I am the center of the world. We all think that and believe it to be absolutely true. But he says to remain human, to actually have any kind of compassion, you have to understand and really fight for the stories of the people that you can't stand. So the guy flying up behind you on the interstate, maybe he's not just trying to be a jerk. Maybe he has a sick kid in the back. Maybe he got a call from home that something is happening. Somebody's breaking into the house. The person at the grocery store just taking their time, or the person that stops to check their list in the middle, or like right now, the guy that took the last 5 loaves of bread when you had your French toast ready and you have the milk and eggs, but he took the last 5 loaves of bread. Maybe there's a story there. Maybe he's just being greedy. Maybe he has elderly neighbors that he's caring for. Maybe there is something happening in his home where his parents, or he has multiple kids, or he is shopping for a shelter that's right up the street. And listen, there is always the possibility that that's not happening, but it also might be. And the only way that we can stay human is to realize that everybody around us is not just doing their thing to make us mad. They have stories. They're real. They're human. And they have things going on. They are image bearers of God. My friend Darren Casper always says, there is not a single person on this planet that you lock eyes with that is not created in the image of God. And so we are called to love our enemies. And then I think Tim Keller gives a great breakdown of this, just to kind of get practical from a mental standpoint. And he uses Micah 6:8 to lay this down. Micah 6:8 says, he has told you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. Micah is the prophet. He's asking the rhetorical question before this, what should I do? What should I bring before the Lord? Should I give all my wealth? Should I give all the burnt offerings? Should I go to church every Sunday? Should I post this amazing thing on Facebook? Should I give 10,000 rivers of oil, which is perfume? And this is what his rhetorical answer from God. What's good? What does the Lord require of you? To do justice, to love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. Keller just gives a beautiful example of this. He says it's like a mobile in a crib for a baby that has 3 different airplanes, birds, or whatever. And all 3 have to be present, or else it just gets crooked and starts it's out of balance. So for the follower of Jesus, Micah 6:8 summarizes the life of the follower of Jesus. Do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. The first 2 really kind of counterbalance each other, tough and tender, truth and love. Do justice. Speak up. Act. Labor toward justice. Also, and I think this is not just when it's in the news, but every day in the common goodness, what we talked about earlier, loving your neighbor, doing right by your neighbor, all of that. Justice is to make right. It is to make good and make whole, not just to make yourself feel better, not just vengeance, not performative, but justice actually is working to make things right, not just punish people you disagree with. When you see neglect, when you see abuse or poor treatment to another human being, not only to just vocalize, but that we are to act in a way that is good to bring about flourishing. There is a right and wrong way to go about doing these things. You can do the right thing in the wrong way. We are to make the appeal for what is right and good for humanity and good for human flourishing. Rain on the just and the unjust. So we are to be for justice. We are to work for what is good and right for human flourishing. Call out abuses of power, the voice for the voiceless, all of that. And we are to do that with honesty. We are also to do and confess that when it's present in our own life. And we are also to love kindness. And I feel like in our world, what sells is what gets the most clicks. And there are some kindness videos out there, but what gets the most clicks is when we create more enemies, not when we actually love more enemies. And when we create more enemies, we kind of work hard to make sure that everybody knows just how unredemptive they are. The Titanic, if you remember the movie The Titanic, I realize like that's now very, very dated. Not just the event of the Titanic, but the movie The Titanic. The bad guy on the Titanic was like the absolute worst of the worst, and we make sure like. And when we're going to post about our enemy, we're going to make sure that we go all the way. Like, remember, he actually the icing on the cake is when he gets into the raft, the lifeboat, and holds a child, like grabs a child and takes him into the lifeboat as if he's somehow, to save his own life. And just in case we didn't hate him enough, we tend to look at the people that we disagree with, and we want to make them even worse. We want to narrow their story down to just they're just horrible. They are one-dimensional. They're evil. Not I disagree with them, but they're evil. And we are called to speak truth, but we're called to do that with love. That is what being the sons of our Father. with the hope of reconciliation. Um, and I think one of the one of the ways we see this, when the religious people were calling out Jesus, one of the things that they said was, one of the accusations that they said was that he ate with tax collectors. All right, tax collectors, I mean, they're still kind of like they are in our day, right? They were swindlers. They were Jews that worked for the Roman government. They were selling out their own people. They were the worst of the worst. And Jesus is actually invited in to sit down and talk with a tax collector. Some of us are really good at being confrontational, like we'll call out anything. And we would never have to worry about being called in to sit down with a tax collector, because the tax collector would never want to sit down with us. I remember I was at a retreat, and there were a couple good old Baptist pastors. There were some great guys there. One guy in particular, though, was talking about how he was going door to door, knocking on people's doors and asking if they knew Jesus. And he's like, everybody was rude. Nobody, said anything, and not one prayer for salvation. And I said, did you get anybody's name? He's like, what are you talking about? I said, well, did you ask anybody's name? Sometimes we can get so caught up with the objective, I'm just going to tell people about Jesus. Well, Jesus actually incarnated into our world. He put our shoes on. He walked on the ground. He lived among us. So this is not like, speaking the truth is not just being so harsh that nobody listens to you. And I feel like we're there. Other times we're really good at fitting in, that we don't want to say anything confrontational. And that's not good either. How do we both do justice? How do we speak up for justice and love kindness? Not speak up and say, like, as a dare, but like, how do we do this with kindness? How do we invite other people to actually know and believe what we believe? And then the last one is walk humbly with our God. How do we do that? Paul's letter to, you ready for this? The Romans, ironically, Jews and Gentiles, Roman converts in Rome. If while we were still enemies, we were reconciled to God by the death of his son, much more, now that we are reconciled, shall we be saved by his life. Jesus didn't wait for us to become friends before he loved us. Jesus loved us while we were enemies. This is the hope of the gospel, that while we were enemies of God, Christ died for us, loved us. Not just like, well, I don't know, I'm a little indifferent about God, but like an enemy of God. Consider that our default puts us at odds with God. We're called enemies of God, worshipers of our own kingdoms. Again, just like David Foster Wallace said, everything in us has told us, I'm the center of the world. I must be God. And yet God, in his infinite mercy, reveals that to us, knows our hearts completely, and even there, loves us. It's pretty remarkable. Tim Keller, I lied. I said I'm going to do Brothers Karamazov. I'm not going to do Brothers Karamazov. I want to read this quote by Tim Keller. I think Tim Keller exemplified this well. And at the end, I was amazed at how many enemies, how many people were while he was dealing with pancreatic cancer, how many people kind of were saying he wasn't strong enough. But I think in my lifetime, one of the best public examples of speaking the truth and doing it in love. And when he passed away, people that both agreed with him and disagreed with him wrote testimonies of how he impacted them. People that disagreed with him actually wrote how he would send emails of encouragement to them in their writing and in their work. One, and certainly she was not an enemy, Tish Warren wrote this view of Tim Keller. She said, the Christian scriptures describe the fruit of the Spirit, what grows in us as we walk with God: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Tim's life was marked by these things. And these dispositions, they're not a political strategy. They weren't part of a brand. They're not a way to sell books or gain power or win culture wars or take back America for Christ. Tim Keller inhabited these ways of being not as a means to any end, but as a response to his relationship with God and his love for neighbor. The last 10 years have been hard on Orthodox or traditional Christians who are wary of Christian nationalism, hyperpartisanship, and the politics of bitterness or resentment. Keller's passing leaves a void in the nascent movement to reform evangelicalism, wrote Michael Lewell in The New Yorker. And today's social political currents make the prospects for change seem dim. Younger Christians, many of whom feel disaffected and disillusioned by the tone, antics, and political idolatry of a flailing American church, have few older leaders to look up to, few public guides who have walked further down life's hard road. Tim, of course, wasn't the only one, but he certainly was a shining light that proved that Christian leaders could steadfastly exhibit intelligence, integrity, graciousness, and countercultural kindness. He showed us a way of being. As I read many tributes from others this past week, I realize that I'm mourning not just as a friend and mentor. Now, I'm mourning not just a friend and mentor, but also the loss of Tim's uniquely luminous public witness. Back when Twitter was a thing, people would just say whatever they wanted to. People have said that Twitter is making people mad that you don't know, and Facebook is making people mad that you do know. People would get on there and just say the nastiest things, and they were very just overtly determined to misunderstand Tim, and that seems everywhere in our day. But he would engage them in good faith. He would engage them. And somebody asked him one time, they said, why do you engage people that you know don't care about what you're saying? Why do you, that they have ill intent? Why do you engage? And this is what he said. This wasn't online. This was just a background conversation. So he wasn't doing this for a publication. He said, I genuinely want them to know the love of Jesus. Friends, listen, I'm worn out by political stances. I'm worn out by social media. I'm worn out by performative mic drops. I'm worn out by indifferent Christians. I'm worn out by hardened Christians or theologians. It's just the culture is exhausting. What Tim put on display was not an effort to win a culture war, but simply his response to the goodness of Jesus. If we can know and grasp how wide and high and deep is the love of Christ, then we will love differently, not just friends, but even our enemies. We will forgive not in the absence of justice, but forgive with the hope of genuine reform and change in our own lives and in the one we are forgiving. I realize this is long for a snow day. But the command of Jesus, and this is going to be big as we pull some of these things out, as we keep going through 2 Samuel, love your enemies. And in so doing, we will become more like our Father who is in heaven. So this week, Pray for those that you don't like. Take some time and actually pray for some people that you don't like. And I've been trying to do this lately, and it's frustrating. But um, try that and be safe. You are loved by God, and we'll keep going.